So we're up to the deploying and managing software updates. Okay, so we've been talking about using the SCCM to deploy software and eventually next lesson, I think we'll be talking about deploying operating systems and so forth. Yeah, software updates. So we already have spoken about software updates in this terms of Microsoft WSUS, and we've done that in 5ICW, how we configure WSUS to obtain updates from the internet, and then we were able to use WSUS to approve updates for specific groups of computers. Okay, so we're going to, SCCM, like I've mentioned, takes advantage of a lot of underlying services, such as WSUS server, to actually control and deploy software as well as updates in this case. Okay, so instead of doing it a bit here, a bit there, software deployment here, operating system deployment over there, and update deployment over here. It's sort of done all in the one management console. Okay, that's what the System Center suite of softwares is all meant to do. So don't forget, guys, System Center is one part of the System Center Configuration Manager is one part of the System Center type management interfaces. There's also the System Center Virtual Machine Manager. There's the System Center Disaster Protection Manager. So there's plenty of System Center, if you like, type management, which, like I said, is a management service that controls a lot of underpinning services or suites of software and combines the functionality to be in the one area. Instead of managing per server, you're managing across servers from one area. So today we're talking about deploying and managing software updates. Okay, so today we're going to give you a review of software update feature, preparing the configuration manager site for software updates, managing software updates, configuring automatic deployment rules, and monitoring and troubleshooting software updates. So before we even go on a little bit, go on to how System Manager does it, can anyone remind us why software updates is important? I know this seems tedious for a lot of you guys, but just want to, I know we're in a virtual class, but don't be shy. Turn on your mic and tell us, why is software updates important? Not just for Microsoft, but for anyone. Security patches, definitely. So security patches, so obviously if some software is out there with known vulnerabilities that can be exploited, and then bug patching, and bugs removal, as with anything that a human creates or system that human creates, there's always holes and mistakes and things that people never thought of. And basically the patches, updates, fixes those problems, adds more features. Definitely, as Surprise says, more features. Definitely, you'll notice that your Windows 10, the amount of features that your Windows 10 started off with back when it was first released up until now has certainly changed. Up-to-date application, that's what we're talking about, updating the applications, but the reasons, okay, the reasons for it. So it could be the standards, if that's what you mean, Transing, that you're updating the standards. And what's a compatibility? So I'm not sure if you guys has experienced this problem, but like I think you guys might have, if you've got access to VMware Workstation. And by the way, talking about VMware Workstation, who was that needed VMware Workstation and had a bit of issue getting it? Was that you, Transing? Yeah. So basically, that's fixed now. So that's basically that site, which provides that online store, needed a VMware license keys to give out. And at that point in time, when you saw the error where this software is not temporarily not available, they've actually ran out of keys, and they had to request more keys from VMware under our license, or under their license, which then they give to all these people who are utilizing their services. So now they should be fully stocked up, if you like. It's like you go into the Coles and they ran out of toilet paper. It's the same idea. They ran out of keys. Okay, now I don't think anyone's hoarding keys, but now they've got a new supply, and you should be able to get it. Okay. So getting back to updates, did anyone? It's not just cause it's run out. Yeah, but I think it's all good now. Yeah, it's full of toilet paper as much as you want, Jack. I think they've even taken off the limits if you want to get more. So talking about VMware Workstation, did anyone have a situation where if you had VMware Workstation 15, everything's working, then you did that Windows 10 1909 update or one of the updates last year, and then suddenly you couldn't turn on your virtual machines anymore. Did anyone have that? No? Okay. You had a few weeks ago on your laptop. Okay, I'm not sure if was it related. Yeah, you did last year, Reese. Yeah, I think everyone did. Basically, it caught me off guard. That's for sure. And as soon as I noticed that, I did a bit of research, and it turned out it was a wide-ranging problem. And basically, there was a release for VMware Workstation straight away, basically, and you installed that update, and then it worked again. I think after the Windows update, it stopped a functionality of VMware. I don't know exactly the details. You can look it up if you want, but basically it prevented VMware from running. Okay, running or turning on the virtual machines. And as soon as you updated that VMware 15.1 at the time, I think, it solved the problem. So patches, updates, very important for security, for added functionality, for removal of bugs, for compatibility issues. So it's a very important thing. Okay, as we all know, but that's example I gave with the VMware updates, with Windows 10 affecting VMware. It's not the first time that I've seen a Windows update or Microsoft update affect functionality in other software. Okay, so that was just one in recent memory, but there's been others in the past where it affected the programs running on my computer because it updated, it's locked down something, and then the software I was using was a little bit older and needed to be updated. So basically what I'm trying to highlight is that updates cause problems themselves. Okay, it's great to have updates, great to have patches, especially the security patches and whatnot. But if you didn't realize it, patches themselves can be the cause or source of problems in functionality. So for instance, in that example where I updated my computer and then that VMware stopped working, if that was me applying that update as if I was in charge of the whole TAFE as a system and I was applying that update, and I just applied it without any investigation, just imagine everyone came in on Monday morning into classroom, ready to do their work, and they go to start their virtual machines and they can't. How much of a problem do you think that would have been, guys? Like, just imagine that. Like, think of when we were back in class. Think of a busy Monday morning, every classroom full of students ready to go. Yes, it would have been a disaster. And what would the lecturer have done? Probably not much, because they wouldn't even be aware of that problem if they hadn't encountered that problem straight away. And they'll be pulling out their hair. So basically, updates can cause problems. And if you just applied all updates without any testing or confirmation that it's not going to cause a problem, then you're going to make a disaster, like was if said. Okay, so therefore the thing about updates is they're good, but the thing about updates is that you need to make sure you are deploying them in an organized, systematic, thorough way where you involve testing and you confirm operational compatibility with your current systems before you actually approve these updates. Okay, so today what we're going to do is look at the overview of the software update features, prepare configuration manager site for software updates, manage software updates, configure automatic deployment rules, and monitor and troubleshoot software updates. Jack says that's the fastest way to get fired in IT. Well, specifically, it was a corporate network with thousands of connected PCs. Yeah, it's not ideal, is it? Where you cause your business not be able to do the business they're getting paid for. And that's TAFE. So So the thing is, don't be the first. That's a general rule. Okay, general rule in IT: don't be the first. Okay, don't be the first to apply an update to your system. Wait. Okay, doesn't mean like you apply it as the first thing you get. Just wait. Okay, specifically for those non-security, non-critical updates. Don't be the first. Don't be the first one out of the trenches, because you know what happens, right? The first one gets shot. So basically, what the general idea is, uh, the general idea for that is that, you know, if you wait a little bit, someone will have the same problems. There will be a documented solution for it. What did Sukraj said? Don't be user for Win Home Edition. What does that mean, Sukraj? Okay. Yeah, you get first updates. Definitely, there'll be like if you get an update and it causes a problem, there won't even be any documentation on how to fix the problem possibly. All right, getting back to software updates, highlights in software updates. So we have what's called software update groups. So we need to organize our software updates in your environment effectively by using software update groups. With automatic deployment rules and new updates automatically or manually. The deployment of software update groups can be done automatically or manually, and we can retrieve compliance information from devices for the software updates without deploying them. What's it say? Doesn't organization has a test environment? Yeah, absolutely. That's what I was talking about with thoroughly testing it before you update it, to deploy the updates. Definitely. So my example was if you didn't and you just deployed the update without thorough testing or thorough, a systematic approach, then you could have generated all these problems beforehand. Okay. So, but even with that testing environment, like I said, you test it, you realize there's a problem, and if right straight away, then there might not even be any documented fixes for that problem just yet. So really, sorry about the barking, guys. The dog's seeing something. Yeah, so like even if you do testing, it might not be available the fixes for that problem as generated. So so basically what we're saying is thorough testing, that's definitely should be done, and that should be done into not just on any computer, but on an example computer that's common with your standard operating environment. Okay, so and with virtualization, that's very easy. You could just clone one of your computers, even if that's a physical computer. We talked about P2V, physical to virtual conversion. We can convert one of your physical computers onto as a virtual machine and test it, a test update in there. Or you could just deploy it into a test physical machine. But you need to test it into the same environment, as in the same exact configurations. So when we're talking about the software update groups, this is where, as we sort of remember, we can actually define groups of devices, users, and we can apply updates and to different groups and not others. And that's what Wazif was talking about. So instead of actually deploying across the organization, we can actually create a software update group called testing, with some test computers in there as members, and then we apply the software update to this group to make sure it deploys correctly, first of all, and secondly, doesn't create functional problems with compatibility or something else. And like I said, one of the best things about SCCM is that it has compliance information. Okay, so it can tell us whether the computers that we've deployed updates to, if they're compliant or not. So it's not just about, oh, we've deployed it today. And obviously some computers might not even be online at that point in time. So do they get it? Will they get it? Well, with the compliance information, we can know exactly who's got it, who hasn't got it. And that allows us to understand, especially when it comes to security risk. If you're not patched for that the very latest exploit that's running wild, then that puts your organization in a very dangerous place. So automatic deployment rules. So automatic deploy software updates. You can specify the criteria for the software updates, and the software updates are automatically added to the software update group. Okay, so the criteria might be that they are members of a certain group. The criteria might be that they're of a certain operating system. The criteria might be that they are used by certain users. The criteria might be they have certain hardware specifications. Okay, so you can imagine how you wouldn't want to apply a Intel driver update for a computer doesn't even have Intel drivers or Intel hardware. So when a deployment of a software update group is available, the software update will be automatically rolled out to clients. Okay, so once this is after it's thoroughly tested, and you apply it to a group, and those groups will automatically get it. With Configuration Manager Current Branch, you are able to reuse an automatic deployment rule by redeploying to another collection. So basically, once we these deployment rules, like I said last time, they're just like ingredients. Okay, they're like ingredients in our kitchen, so we can use it again and again for different recipes. So basically, what this is saying is, if it's sitting there, we create this automatic deployment rule, it's sitting there. We can deploy it to one collection. We can deploy it to another collection. So collections are users groups, computer groups, etc., etc. Sorry, there we are. Software update filtering. So searching or filtering software updates with Configuration Manager search engine. So we can actually find specific updates by using the filtering. We can add a set of criteria that makes it easy to filter for the update. So we could filter based on operating system, software, hardware, or many other features. We can save the defined criteria when you finish to use that criteria for future update deployments. Again, that's one of the good things. Once you create one of these items, objects, it's like I said, it just sits there in our spice rack, and we can actually use it again and again in different recipes, in different functions. With the results of the search, you can select those software updates and add them to the existing or new software update group. You can also see the compliance information, which is very important. Software update monitoring. So the Configuration Management Console provides the monitoring information about software updates and the running process. So obviously we know when things are ready to be deployed, whether things are still being staged, and whether computers are receiving it. So you can view the following information. You can view the compliance and deployment information about key software updates. So if this was a patch that secures it from a certain exploit, then you can actually see how many computers are compliant and what is the status of your company. We have detailed state messages for deployments and software update assets. So what is the state of the update? We have error codes with additional information for software updates. So if there's been some error, then these error codes can be used to search for the causes. State messages for software updates as synchronization. So again, if you remember, our WSUS needs to synchronize its updates from the internet. So don't forget, even though we're using SCCM to control these updates, it's still using the WSUS behind the scenes. And just for anyone who's forgotten, the WSUS basically downloads all the updates from the Microsoft update sites on the internet and holds them on that server. So all your client computers, instead of downloading the updates from the internet like your home computers does, like you guys and me, myself, anyone who's working from home these days, are getting the updates from their home from the internet directly. Instead of getting it from there, it's holding it on that WSUS server, and the clients are configured to get it from the WSUS server. And through that method, we are able to control who gets updates, what updates are tested, what updates are approved, and so forth. So managing superseded software updates. So when the term superseded means when something is old, Okay, so when something's old, it's there's a newer version that older one is superseded by the newer version. So software updates automatically expire after being superseded. So once it's actually superseded, as in this was a security patch for let's say May, but there's a security patch which is for June, and that security patch for May then becomes superseded by the one for June. So that might be a malware removal tool. You guys might have seen that being installed on your computers quite often. And obviously, you're probably looking at, oh, why is the malware removal tool always being installed or updated? Well, that's because there's a newer version, newer definitions of malware, and and the malware removal tool itself needs to be updated to be able to remove the malware, as the term suggests. So there's no point using the malware removal tool from 2 months ago or 2 years ago because it's no longer wouldn't do the job anymore. So that's what superseded means, that they're not deployed, cannot deploy a superseded software update, which is fine because it's a waste of time and effort because it's been, obviously there's a later version. Configuration Manager lets you choose to manage superseded software updates. So you can configure a specific period of time in which the software update doesn't automatically expire after it's being superseded. So even though it's being superseded, you can choose not to deploy the new one. And I'm not, and this is not something we will talk about if it's a security update or security patch. It's more so for how we want to keep a consistent environment. So something that's non-critical. So for example, you might notice my version. You guys, what version are you guys running? Okay, so what version are you guys running? 1909. Reese has got that. What about the rest of you? I'm guessing it's 1909 as well. Yeah, Jack's got 1909. What about the rest of you guys? Looks like everyone's got 1909. Yeah, that was a long one. Liam, oh, I haven't seen you in class before, Liam. Is this the first lesson I've seen you in class, Liam? No, that's all right. I'll talk to you later. Yeah. So was if it's got something that's okay. Is this on your physical machine? You're on the city campus. No worries. So basically, you can see that mine is obviously a year. If you look at the naming convention, is a year older than most of yours, and that's not because the TFSA couldn't apply the. You can see it's operated by TFSA, and my computer unfortunately is under the control. Not unfortunately, I shouldn't say that. My computer is being managed by the TFSA System Center Configuration Manager as far as update. So you can see that that's quite off. That's if you know the naming convention, that means it's 18 means 2018 September, whereas 1909 means 2019 September, which is probably the last major update. And like Jack said, it took ages. I noticed I was worst thing for me was it was on my media center. I was about to watch something, but there was an update. Thinking it was just a typical update, I applied it, not knowing that it was going to take so long before we can use it to watch something. So that sort of ruined the idea of watching something that day. Yeah, you got 1809 because you're at the TAFE campus, aren't you? So that's what I'm talking about. Was if that they're keeping this version consistent across the board. Okay, so even though it's been superseded, as you guys have all said, okay, most of you said 1909 is what you guys have got, but that the ICTS TFSA has chosen to actually configure a specific period in which that software update doesn't automatically expire after being superseded. Okay, So that ensures a consistent environment. Okay, that's positive because what you want is a predictable environment that you know things function well. On the downside is that the functionality that's added by that update and possible other things is not being applied. In our case, I know that TAFE SA it's not applied that major update, but it's still applying the security patches, if you know what I mean. So even though you may not have, even though we've got the 1809 like Wazif and myself because we're using TAFE computers, all the security patches are still updated. It's just all the application and functionality. So let's see what can we skip updates like skip for no latest version? You can not apply it like here, but you'll see that just like when we did the SCCM updates, you notice, remember when we did that worksheet when we were installing the SCCM, we had to apply the updates ourselves. You know that we could skip some of these updates, minor ones, but not the major ones. Okay, we had to go from one base to another base. Those little ones in between could be missed, but the big ones like that, what's a 1909 can't be missed. Okay, that's almost like if you like to compare it. Not that 1909 was basically, you know how we said that Windows 10 is the last version of client operating system Microsoft will release. Well, that's true because it's still called Windows 10, but reality is when we applied the 1909, we did an upgrade. It's almost equivalent to a operating system upgrade from Windows 8.1 to 10. It's almost like that. Okay, I can't tell you exactly the details of it right off the top of my head, but effectively it took so long because we did an upgrade. If it was in the old days, that would have been let's say Windows 11 as a new version. Okay, so wherever they do these major releases, it's almost like upgrading your operating system with this update. So you're starting from a new base, if you like, and then all these cumulative updates or patches get applied after that base. Okay, so yeah, was it a good question? Can we skip updates? Well, in this case, with the operating system, you can skip the little ones in between, but when you do that major one, you have to apply that first. You have to go from one major to another major. All right, so yeah, so this, we can configure a specific period where the superseded software is still not updated. Okay, that's fine. That's because we like to control our environment and maintain a stable standard operating environment. This way, you can deploy superseded software updates if necessary. It gives us increased user control over installation of software updates. Configuration Manager allows users to have more control over the software updates are installed onto their devices. Users can schedule or reschedule software installations or updates via the software center during non-working hours. So like I said, like you guys have told me, that update, the 1909 update took incredibly long time compared to all other updates. And that's because it was like an operating system update. Operating system upgrade. So just imagine that was applied in the middle of the day where all your workers were doing their jobs and they clicked apply or they clicked restart. How long would they be offline? So we've been talking about minimizing disruptions to your network, minimizing downtime. That would have meant a big portion of their day was not being able to do their work. Yeah, almost like that was it. So basically, what this means is that we can schedule it for non-working hours. So, for example, TAFE SA, we close our doors about 9:30 at night when it's normal operations. So why not schedule that update after hours? Okay, so it's called maintenance windows. Software update files are stored on the content library. The contents of the software updates is stored in the content library of the configuration manager. The single instance storage of the content library is also used for software updates. Before content files are downloaded, configuration manager checks to see if the content files is already in the library. If the contents is available, it will use those files for the new software updates. Administrative access. So especially for software update feature, the role for software update management is defined in the role-based administration. So role-based administration is basically the idea of delegation, delegating permissions to do certain functions, tasks, and that's based on that role-based administration. Software update deployment template. So in configuration manager current branch, you can only create deployment templates with the automatic deployment wizard, deployment rule wizard, or the deployment software update wizard. The deployment template stores many of the deployment properties that will not change if you create a new deployment. So basically the idea of template is that it's going to be able to reuse again and again to save you work and time. So if you have features like it's the same group of computers, same criteria, same things all the time, why do you have to put that in every time? By using these templates, those things are pre-populated and you just change what needs to be changed. So some of the prerequisites, like I said, System Center Configuration Manager needs WSUS, needs the WSUS administration console because it's actually it's going to use that. Why reinvent the wheel? Why make a configuration manager that does the same thing as WSUS? Not just use configuration manager to use WSUS to supply the updates, because that's what it was designed for. We need a Windows update agent, which is, again, the term agent is a bit of software that's actually installed onto the client computers. Then the bits, which is that background intelligent transfer service that we mentioned many times. That's how we transfer data or deployments across from the servers to the clients. And the BTS bit supports pausing and resuming, a bit like when you're downloading off the internet. In the old days, if you're downloading a file and you're interrupted, you have to start again and download it from scratch. Whereas these days, you might notice that if you can pause it, you can even shut down your computer, you can actually resume it later. And that's similar to what you can do with bits, that instead of re-downloading every time because it's interrupted, it can actually resume. You need the Windows installer. You need the site server communication to the software update point. So again, we've been talking about the idea of all these types of points, the management point, the distribution point, in this case, the software update point. And in our labs, that's basically the same server, but in reality, they don't have to be the same server. Software updates in SCCM. When it comes to deploying updates, SCCM is the best tool to do it. We can deploy updates. Deploying updates is a complex task, like we sort of discussed. SCCM makes it easier not only to deploy the updates, but to gather the deployment reports as well. So again, that's the compliance part. How do we know it's been updated? How do we know it's been deployed? Which computers don't have it deployed? Who's compliant? Who's not? And basically, those reporting makes SCCM a lot more powerful. Software updates in SCCM provides a set of tools and resources that can help manage the complex task of tracking and applying software updates to clients in the enterprise. To deploy software updates, you can use any of the below methods. So automatic deployment, which means once you've approved this update, then it's deployed automatically, meaning it's all the computers. Manual means you have to manually specify which one's deployed. Phase deployment is where instead of deploying to all computers all at the same time, you might want to deploy to certain groups or certain collections, as they're called, one at a time. Phase approach. Deploying third-party updates. Whenever we talk about third-party in this context, it's not your company and it's not Microsoft. So they're the two parties, your company and Microsoft, okay? Because this is a Microsoft course. Third-party means anyone who's not you or the Microsoft, meaning, let's say, Adobe, meaning companies like Kaspersky, meaning companies, other companies basically. So starting with SCCM 1806, so hopefully you guys have all got that one updated. You can deploy third-party updates easily as well. So instead of you needing to go to the third-party update site and all your computers downloading them directly, like we talked about, yeah, Dell, HP, IBM? Yeah, those are hardware driver type updates, Sunday, Malcolm. So they can be incorporated into the SCCM. So instead of actually, like we said, the advantages of controlling these updates is the thorough testing, and we can control what is deployed, what is not deployed, so and so forth. So if we can incorporate those third-party updates into SCCM update, then we can do the same. We can control their updates. We can cache their updates. We don't have to go directly to the internet. So you can add third-party software updates catalogs node into the configuration manager. You can subscribe to third-party catalogs, publish their updates to your software update point, and then deploy them to your clients. So effectively, you can download their catalog, download their updates, test them, control who and when updates are deployed. So overview of the software update features. We can use the software update feature to scan. So basically scanning means we're going out and looking at all the computers. Analyze. So analyze if they got the update, they need the update, and so forth. And then deploy the updates to the client computers. It supports the following functionality. There's seamless and flexible update deployment. Seamless means you don't notice that you're transitioning from one system to another system. Flexible means we can apply into different situations. We can use the idea of the maintenance windows. Remember what we said about what if we deploy that big update in the middle of the day? Because that's when your computer, if we left it like your home computer, it will just know there's an update. It will download it behind the scenes and it will ask you to apply an update. And basically, if your users, if it was just left like that, your users would probably just go, okay. And then for the next hour or so, they're offline, if you remember. And that would just wreck productivity for that day for that user. Just imagine you're working on a busy call center and you as a user click yes to that update, you're offline for the next hour. That wouldn't help your productivity or the productivity of the call center if everyone started going offline because of that update. So this maintenance window is that idea that these computers will be online between these times. These computers will be offline or not being used actively another times. So maintenance windows allows us to define when these updates should take place to minimize disruptions. So automatic deployment rules allows us to create these deployment rules like we discussed before. We can enhance monitoring and reporting. Again, we've discussed this. One of the most powerful things about using SCCM is the reporting and monitoring. Wake on LAN, if you've never heard of that, it basically requires your computer to have Wake on LAN supported network card. And basically by sending a Wake on LAN packet onto the network that you're on, it can turn your computer on. So you're probably going to say, when we're discussing the maintenance window, you might say, hey, it's 3 a.m. That's a good time to do an update. But whose computers are on at 3 a.m.? I know some of you guys, your computers are on 24/7, but if we're taking a looking at a business, probably they even have a rule to turn off your computers so you go home, okay, just to save power and all that kind of stuff. So what if they're off during the maintenance window? Well, we can use Wake on LAN to actually turn on the computer. So send a packet on the LAN and it will actually turn on the computer. And we can also use the power management support. There's also internet-based client management. So like I showed you before, there's a cloud distribution point and cloud points that's in SCCM, and that allows us to manage even computers on the internet. Like that's a good example for it is right now. Most of a lot of the TAFE SA lecturers, as well as lecturers who are using TAFE SA assets, are actually working from home. So how do we actually get any of those nice things or the functionality of our SCCM? Well, with the distribution of software, at least, I showed you last time, that we can still go to our App Store and the various various software center, and still works because that's, again, allows for the cloud distribution points and so forth. It also supports for network access protection, NAP. So basically, network access protection prevents computers from joining your physical network if they're not recognized. Okay, so there's a whole heap involved in that, which is actually, detects this new computer, check for compliance before it's allowed onto the network, just in case like someone brings their own laptop full of viruses. If they plug themselves in, those worms and whatnot can just go wild on the network. But basically, part of the network access protection from Microsoft is it checks for compliance, in the sense that we checks for things like the Windows is updated, the operating system is updated, the firewall's turned on, the virus is updated, and you've scanned it before it actually lets you onto the proper network. In the meantime, when you plug in initially with NAP, you're put on a sort of a separate network that cannot access the regular network and can only access the remediation service. But that's for something else. And in Cisco switches or hardware, you can also configure NAP as well, network access protection. There's also a System Center Update Publisher. As the name suggests, publishes the updates. So what are the prerequisites for a software update feature? So here it is. So these are the things you have in place. Like I said, SCCM is a suite of software. All these things have to be in this working in order to get this functionality. So we need WSUS 3.0, SP2 or newer. We need the administration console 3.0 or newer. We need the right security permissions to be able to manage this. And we need to configure a configuration manager infrastructure roles required management point, distribution point, software update point on the WSUS server usually, the reporting service point, which is optional, but it's for reports only. And the client requirements is that we need client settings and the Windows Update agent is installed on the clients. Again, that agent is that piece, a little bit of software that's installed on the client operating systems. Bear with me for a second. Where are we? Here we go. The system role for software updates, the software update point system role works with WSUS for the software update configuration and management. All right, so, and deployment scenarios to consider include installation within a configuration management hierarchy. So we've already discussed how System Center can work in a hierarchy. So if we're installing it in the hierarchy means different levels. That's a scenario that to consider. Using an existing WSUS server as a synchronization source. So are we synchronizing to another WSUS server? The use of multiple software update points, like we said, all these update points or these points can be the same computer, it could be many computers. And obviously, depending on your complexity of your scenario, you may want to place some of these points, whether that be distribution points or update points or any of the other points, strategically on the different LANs based on speed, connectivity, and need to segregate those. Configuration, or another scenario to consider is the configuration as an internet-based software update point. So that sounds funny, doesn't it? If you're on the internet, which means they're not on your home network and not on your LAN, let's say, do we need to have a software update point? Couldn't they just get it from internet? Like, so for example, guys, we're all working from home now. I'm using a TAFE asset, but should my computer be configuring, getting its update from Microsoft now because I'm at home? What do you guys think? Should it? Let me just all right, let's start this one. Okay, so who's awake? should my computer, now that I'm working from home, be getting its updates from Microsoft directly? All right, so we've got a couple of people answering. All right, so what about the rest of you? There's 6 of you, no answers, or 5 of you now. So give me something. Should they, my computer, as a TAFE SA asset, be getting its updates from Microsoft directly? Everyone's going no. Jack and Sukraj holding out. What do you guys think? No, maybe they're asleep. Just joking, guys. So yeah, was if says controls them. I think that's what you want. All right. So basically, yeah, even though my computer is at home, doesn't mean I just go apply every patch and everything. Like we said, there's problems with applying patches just because they're available, and just because of and basically, you know, this, even though I'm at home, what this allows us to do is actually still, like Wazif says, controls what patches are applied to my computer, even though I'm at home. And I've been at home for extended periods of time. So basically configuring an internet-based software update point means that I still can get updates from TAFE SA instead of from Microsoft. And again, TAFE SA gets to control what's on my systems. And also, again, TAFE SA can a compliance report on what's deployed onto computers that are working from home, for example. What did Wazif says? If you're going directly, then where exactly? There's no controls. It's basically wherever Microsoft think you should have, which is basically all these updates. You should have all of them. Sync will be a problem. What do you mean by sync will be a problem? As in downloading from Microsoft, or the fact of downloading, or the fact that my computer. Okay, so I think what you mean is my computer will be out of sync with every other TAFE SA computer once we go back. Is that what you mean? Yeah, so that's true. That's right. That will be a problem. Definitely. If we just let the computers, if they're working from home like we are now, just go crazy and uncontrolled and basically download updates from Microsoft directly, by the time we take it back to work, we might not be at the same sync, if you like, if that's what Wazif says. All right, and you're right. So again, configuring as an internet-based software, this update point allows us the idea to work from home, or the idea that we're always on the move. Like in the new age, our computers are not tied to one location. Well, a lot of people have laptops and then from location to location on the road and so forth. All right, so let's have a look at this diagram to have a look at how the synchronization of the software update catalog metadata works. So you got the Microsoft updates, you got the WSUS server, you got the WSUS database behind the scenes, you got your site server, which is your SCCM, and you got the site database. And you've got these various tools within them. So this site server becomes the management point and the distribution point, whereas this WSUS server is the update point. And you notice that there's a database associated with the site server, and we talked about that. That's the SQL database, and for ideally it will be on a separate server like it's shown here. But in our deployment, in our labs, to save on the amount of servers, we actually place the database on the same servers. In fact, to save resources, our WSUS server becomes the same servers, same as your site server. All right, so what happens? So through the administration call, our site server, which is our configuration manager, communicates with the WSUS server. The WSUS server gets synchronization from the Microsoft update, so that's where it's going to get it from, and then it's stored in the database. Through the management point, so the WSUS server is going to communicate that the fact that it's been updated to the site server, and that's going to be stored. The site server, knowing that it's been updated, it's got the updates, and what updates are available is going to be put onto the site database as well. And now we've got some managed computers and idea of reports, and we've got a WMI repository. So now this client computer or managed computer communicates with the management point, okay, checking in, getting instructions, and it's been told, hey, you go check with WSUS server for updates. The WSUS server checks within its database for what updates are available and what updates are applied to this computer. And again, this computer will check back to see if it's part of a collection and what updates are bound for it. And before it checks the WMI repository and gets the updates. The management point, knowing this, updates its site database, and basically are you able to report back, create reports that this client computer has applied those updates that it's that we were talking about. All right, so I know that sounds very convoluted, and there's many parts, but each part, obviously, at the end result, we don't necessarily think of them as separate parts, but behind the scenes, there's all these communication that's going on. But at the end of the day, when you're using the SCCM, you can see what updates are deployed, who's got them, and produce reports on it. That's basically what we're interested in. But obviously, from a troubleshooting point of view, all this communication must happen in order for it to work correctly. Compliance states. So what is compliance? Compliance means that if you're meant to have this, this, and that, and you're meant to be configured like this, like this, like that, then if you are compliant, you have all of those things. If you're not compliant, that means you don't have all those, you're not obeying all the rules. Okay, compliance, if you're following the rules, you're compliant. If you're not following rules, or you don't have something, or you haven't done something, then you're not compliant. So with the compliance state, so compliance states means what state are you? So required means my state is that I am supposed to have these updates, for example, but I don't have it yet. So it's required. It's something I need to apply. So installed means I've installed those updates, which is good. That's the desired result. At the end of the day, most times is that if it's installed, it's good. If it's required, it means it hasn't got the updates, and that's needs to get to from that required to that installed. Then there's a couple of other states as well, not required, which is also good. Okay, so if it's not required, it doesn't need to be installed. So that's also good. And unknown is bad, so we're not sure what it's got, but basically they're the states that a computer can be in as far as compliance goes. So again, if we talk about the software update deployment process, so previously that's all about the metadata. So again, we have the managed computer, we've got the site server, we've got the software update local source, which is our version. So we've got the Microsoft updates. We use the administrative console. We communicate with the Microsoft updates, and basically those updates are downloaded and put onto the local source, so local copy of it. Then with the SCCM, we're using the management point and distribution point. We're actually basically telling what updates are available. When the computer, when the managed computer, we push out instructions, or it's actually checking the management point, it would be told of the distribution points that has the updates, in this case, available. And then it actually reports back to the management point that it's going to get the updates, and then it's put in the database. So it's, don't forget, these managed computers get it from the distribution point. So installing software update point. So it's the software update point, or SUP. To install, we need to install WSUS server and the WSUS server administration console on the site server if using a remote WSUS server installation. So basically, we can have the WSUS server on the same server as the site server, But if it's not on the same site server, then we need to install the WSUS administration console onto the site server. We choose to store the updates locally. Okay, so obviously that's where we're downloading it from. And that's one of the benefits of WSUS is you're not downloading updates 100 times because you have 100 computers that need them. You download it once from the internet, then it's redistributed to your clients from this local source. We determine the database requirements, choose between the default and custom website. We install the software update point site system. We choose to create a new site system or modify an existing site system. We provide the appropriate port configuration if you use the custom WSUS website. So if you remember back to when we did 5ICW, if you remember, one of the steps was to configure the group policies to tell the clients what port or what is the WSUS server and what port to access them on. So that's quite important because obviously, if you not accessing on the right port, it's like you're not talking to the right person. We can review the SUP setup log for details. So the software update point setup log. So you'll notice that with the configuration manager, there's so many different logs to check the progress, to check what's happened. And for here, you can check the details of this deployment. So configuring the software update client settings. So this is the client settings. So remember, we talked about the client as that software that's installed onto the client operating system, your Windows 10. The software update section provides configuration options to enable software updates and configure settings on the client software. So here, well, first of all, do you want to enable software updates on this client? That's obviously yes. And how often? When is it scanned? Updates can scan schedule. So basically, when do we even check that there's updates? So or need updates. So it occurs every 7 days, so once a week at 12 a.m. So in that maintenance window. So that's out of hours or out of normal work hours, basically midnight. Schedule deployment reevaluation. So basically, again, every 7 days at 12 midnight, it rescans to reevaluate whether it needs any more updates or if the updates themselves are required. When software updates deployment deadline reached, install all other software updates deployment with deadline coming within the specified period. So basically, when we configure an update, we can specify if there's a deadline, and that deadline says this must be installed by that time. And in this case, it's configured as no, meaning you don't necessarily have to install it by the deadline. So this is in your client machines. Okay, so this is on your client machines, and let's have a quick look at mine. So if you remember, I changed this to large categories. If you remember that once you've got the configuration management client fully installed and it's operational, you get this configuration manager tool inside your control panel. All right. Okay, so if we switch back to here, so this is on the Actions tab. And if we're talking about machine, if we look at that, that's machine policy retrieval. There you go. And then software update, deployment evaluation cycle, and software update scan cycle. So these are actions. So what does that mean? It means that these are things that's gonna run on your system. So for example, if I want to run a software update deployment evaluation right now, I can manually run it. Hopefully that's not, it says it's going to take several minutes. Hopefully it doesn't disrupt what we're doing here. So you know how some of you guys ask, can we force some of these things to run because it's not running? We're not sure if it's completed or not, or we want it to happen straight away. Some of these actions all of these can we can come here and confirm it. All right, so let's keep on going. So the configuration manager properties dialog box enables you to run evaluation and scan cycles manually. Methods for determining software update status. To identify when a software update are required, we can sort, filter, or search the all software updates list, or we can review the software update compliance reports. So if we look at this picture, this is actually a good way of showing us what's happening. And from this picture, I can see that no computers currently is compliant. That's possibly because we've just created this software update. You can see it's this one we called critical update. It's created at that time, and you can see that there's one which is non-compliant, which means there's probably one computer that's actually turned on and scanned itself and then realized it's non-compliant. It's reported back that it's non-compliant. It's saying that there's two which is unknown. And so if you look at this, there's a total of 3 assets. So obviously this picture was not in a real production environment. It's more like a testing lab, just like what we got. And what this is really saying is these 2 are unknown, means that they have not necessarily been turned on and have not scanned whether they need the update or not. So that's why it's unknown. So, but we know that one is non-compliant. Okay, so software update group organizes multiple software updates into a single object. Advantages of using the software update groups is to simplify the tracking of compliance status, provides a method of delegated software update administration. So delegated is basically the ability to give other people the power to administer it. Downloading content and distribution deployment packages. So using the download software update wizard to create deployment packages. The wizard pages include deployment packages, the distribution point you want to put it on, the distribution settings, the download location, and the language selection. So with the language selection, if you remember when we were working with WSUS, basically that depends on your client computers or the languages that you're using on your operating system. So if you remember, if we have an update for English and we're using English, that's fine. It will download all the updates that's required for English. So if that's 10 gigs of updates, it will download 10 gigs of updates for English. But if we are supporting more than just English, let's say Chinese, Spanish, whatever, if we choose another language, it means it's going to go off and download that 10 gigs of updates in the Spanish or Chinese language as well. So the more languages you select, the more downloads you're going to have, obviously, because you can't apply an English update to a Spanish computer that's set to Spanish as the language. Okay, it's just like you can't upgrade a operating system that's in Spanish with English upgrade. So same idea. So this language selection is very important not to get wrong, especially in our practice, because you select more than English, you're just going to spend a lot longer downloading those updates than if you just selected English on its own. Just be careful of that. Deploying software updates to client computers. So to deploy software updates, you need to put the name and the target collection. So remember, we call collections so groups of computers or users. Okay, so we specify the type of deployment, whether it's a required deployment or it's an available deployment. So the difference between required or available is this: required means must have, available means yeah, it's optional. Okay, so for example, the must-haves are like, for example, the must-haves are the critical updates, the security updates, whereas the available could be that their driver updates or their feature updates. Specify a schedule, like we talked about. We try to minimize downtime disruptions. Configure the user notification and restart behavior. So I'm not sure about you guys, but I've seen on my computer, because it's TAFE, it pops up, your computer needs a restart. And it will tell you that when it must happen. Usually it's 12 hours down the track or something like that, but you can choose to restart now. And basically, we're getting that because of this user notification and restart behavior. What you don't want to do is just restart your computers for your clients without their knowledge, especially if they're in the middle of doing something. Just imagine you're in the middle of writing a document, or you're in the middle of having an online meeting, and it does a restart on you. Pretty not a good. You're not going to leave them with a good impression of your IT service center, are you? So basically, this user notification and restart behavior, usually you have to tell them, you should tell them, you should warn them, and you should give them a chance to finish off their work. Even if it needs to be restarted straight away, at least by telling them, they've got some warning. Whereas generally, if you give them a time to pause, not pause this, to snooze it, so which means you'll come back later or ask you again and so forth. We can configure alert settings. We can specify installation behavior based upon boundary groups, associations, and content availability. So what are automatic deployment rules? Automatic deployment rules, as the name suggests, they're rules for automatically deploying something. So we are selecting the specific software update based upon criteria, creating a software update group containing the list of updates, so all the things you want to put in the updates. So this is all the updates that once you want to apply together. And then we're downloading the update content to a deployment package, so it becomes a package, and distributing the deployment package to the distribution points, and then deploying the software updates to the clients. So all of this before the deployment of the updates to the clients happens behind the scenes on the System Center Configuration Manager. And when you're doing your labs, you'll see some of this, do some of these actions. Okay, what's the process of creating a automatic deployment rules? To create and configure automatic deployment rules, you need to specify the general settings such as the name. Obviously, you need to give it a name. The target collection, so which computers are you targeting? Is it everyone, all computers? Is it a specific group of computers? Especially if we're doing that as part of our testing. The target collection could be test computers or something like that. The software update group, as in what collection, I shouldn't use the word collection, what group of updates are we going to include, and are we going to enable the deployment or not? Specify the deployment settings such as wake on LAN and detail level. So remember that wake on LAN turns on the computers from the network. Define software update filters such as the criteria. Define the schedule of the evaluation and deployment. So like I said, sometimes these things don't happen straight away because they go through cycles. And like we showed you with the client configuration, you can manually start some of those actions if you're sick of waiting. But if you just configure it, it will eventually get there, even if it is triggered only when the cycle runs on the client computer when it's scheduled to run. We can define the user experience and console alerts, so basically warn them what they see during an update and so forth. Specify whether and how the client should access the content depending on the factors such as boundary group. So if you remember, if we're part of that boundary group, there should be a distribution point inside within that to use for that boundary group and so forth. So we can access their local one. Monitoring deployment of software updates. Methods used to monitor the software updates include the status messages, okay, the alerts, the monitoring workspace. So if you remember, here's the monitoring workspace. So if you look at, so it doesn't show you, but this is under the monitoring type area. Viewing reports for software updates. So report categories related to software updates include software updates compliance. So these are all reports that you can actually view. Software updates, deployment management, deployment states, scans, and troubleshooting. And log files. So like I said, there's plenty of logs associated with SCCM, and for to look at for updates specifically on the site server, you've got the WCM configuration manager log, the synchronization manager log. For the WSUS server, there's the WSUS control log, and software distribution log, and on the client computers themselves, you've got these logs to tell you to actually manually look. But these logs, as the name suggests, they're just text files. Very hard to read, but very important in troubleshooting, unfortunately. So you might not be able to get your information that you want out of some of the graphical user interfaces or the reports, but sometimes you have to go into these logs to see what the state is. Okay, I think a few of us already being a little bit frustrated because we know that we've configured something, but we were looking for the results straight away, but it's not happening. It's not happening because it's busy doing the things that we've configured it to do, and it's on its own schedule. Okay, and unfortunately, there's some things we can force by doing that manual actions that we spoke about just before, but some things we just have to wait for it to happen, and that's one of the things we need to get sort of conscious about when we're talking about this subject, because it's not like the other subjects where you do something, it happens pretty much straight away, and sometimes we need to go to the logs to see if it's actually happened or what's happened to it. So that's the presentation, guys, and basically we're gonna do our worksheet. So obviously some of you guys who have computer issues may not be up to current with the worksheets, but obviously the worksheets are where we're learning how to do some of these things. I can talk about what you should see, what's involved in creating these things, but it's in the worksheets where you actually do it. For example, in today's worksheet, what we're going to do is install and configure software update point. We're going to create a software update group. We're going to add the updates to a software update group, and then distribute the update content to distribution points and deploy the update group to clients. All right, guys, so that's the end of the presentation, and what you can do is work on your worksheet. So I'm going to stop recording.